Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Clock podcast. This is a show where I speak to operators, founders, dealmakers, and we discuss what's actually working in business and investing. I am your host, Stephen Weinstock. I've been investing in real estate for 25 years. During that time, I started out with single family homes, moved on to multifamily, some mixed use, some retail and office. Recently, I've been involved in a debt fund where I am investing in first lien positions and enjoying the monthly payments just like the banks do. This episode is sponsored by my fund, the We Capital Mortgage Fund, and we're also sponsored by Cable NOI. Cable, like cable company, NOI.com. CableNOI.com helps multifamily property owners unlock hidden revenue in their buildings. They negotiate bulk cable contracts with the major providers. There is no cost to the owner or the landlord. There are no paperwork. There's no billing tenants. There's no asking tenants to switch their cable. As long as your building is approved, if your tenants call up the random 800 number to order cable or internet, you will get a revenue share of that bill. And they'll also pay you an upfront bonus of about $150 per door just for signing up. So you get checks from AT&T, Spectrum, Optimum, depending on where you are in the country. And I've used this firm myself for my multifamily property. It is literally a no-brainer, not a dollar out of my pocket. I never had to communicate anything with the tenants. And on some of my buildings, they gave me a free house account to use in the office, in the leasing office. So that saved about $150 a month just for signing up. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, I have a guest, Leo Young. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. And I might have to ask you about the cable stuff afterwards.
Yeah, sure. CableNOI.com for everybody else. And he is not a paid participant in that advertisement in case I need to add a disclaimer. But sure, Leo, we will talk about that.
Yeah, it's just been on my list for some time. I mean, it is like a revenue ad for it, and like as long as it makes sense, right? But
Correct.
yes,
So Leo, besides being interested in cable revenue, he is the founder and managing partner of Cornell Communities, a real estate investment firm that focuses on revitalizing housing communities across multiple states. Through his firm, he has overseen over $75 million in transactions, and he has built a platform that combines strong investment performance with a focus on improving housing accessibility. Before he launched Cornell Communities, you worked for an acquisitions team for a large institutional private equity fund, and you also built a career at Tesla, the electric car, where he was a top performer before making the transition into real estate. Elon Musk, I guess you saw him every day at the office.
I wish. I mean, I don't wish. I mean, he's quite an intense guy.
Yeah, yeah. You are a first generation immigrant. You set out to change generational financial habits and build long term wealth through real estate. Leo, it's great to have you on the show. Can't wait to talk to you. Before we start, tell me where you are from right now. Where do you live?
I'm in New York City,
Oh,
so enjoying the beautiful weather finally.
yes, yes. Okay. So my audience knows I am in Brooklyn, New York, born, raised, and I work here. Although I don't invest in New York, that's a little too tough for me. We'll find
Yeah.
out if Leo is more talented than me and is investing in New York, or is he seeking opportunities elsewhere?
I don't think it's a talent issue. It's more so like you look at the environment as an investor, right? And you're like, okay, does this kind of business make sense? Because like real estate is a business. You're offering the business of housing, and just like sometimes it's less conducive, right? I mean, would you sell ice in Iceland, right?
Exactly. Leo, before you got into real estate, from the intro, I said you worked at Tesla. What was the first job you had as an adult?
It was well transitioning into an adult, I suppose. Like in high school, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts.
Wow.
Yeah, this was pre private equity Dunkin' Donuts. They were the working man's coffee. It was quite an experience. I mean, like coffee was like $2 at a time. You're talking to people before their morning coffee, and like they'll throw 15 cents at you like they're doing you a favor or something. But it was a great experience. I got kind of my work muscles built from there. And like, hey, I think the most important lesson is that like hard work is the ticket to entry for anything.
Yeah, old job. I always ask about the first job because a lot of people think that that first job doesn't necessarily help or prepare you for whichever successful career that people that I'm asking about today. And I always say that the first job you have, you learn a lot, just from learning how to work for somebody else, taking directions from somebody else, but it also sometimes teaches you about an industry that, okay, it's not for me. I don't want to do this. What do I need to do something else? And there's a lot of learning experiences in working jobs that either you don't like or trying out, especially as a young adult. How did you transition into real estate?
So for me, I studied finance in college. I loved investments. So I'm a philosopher at heart. I like to sort of understand the reason behind things, and I like to always question everything. And investments made a lot of sense. Finance made a lot of sense because you're basically placing a strategic bet on the future. You're like, well, I think this asset will go up in value, so let me place a bet there. So naturally, after college, well, actually not naturally, but in college, I had an internship, finance internship, and I was just sitting in the cubicle. I was like, oh my God, do I really want to do this for 40 years when I graduate? And the answer was no. So, I took a pivot. I kind of faced my fears. I put my feet to the fire and I went into sales. And it was at Tesla. Tesla was my dream company. I mean, before all the politics, controversy, and stuff, like Elon was a very noble guy. He's working on a very great mission, to help the world change over from fossil fuels to more sustainable fuel. Joining that mission, it was great. I joined there like during a pivotal moment of the company's history. But they were ramping up their mass market car, having a tough time doing it, almost went bankrupt. The entire company was just like very strained, but working alongside A players who were like just focused on the mission and like working really hard, it brought the best out in me, but also burnt me out because it's just like a lot sometimes. And that got me to be like, well, hey, I need to find a way, a more sustainable way to make money that doesn't depend on me kind of, like busting my rear. So eventually got to finding like real estate and then found passive investments. So, I invested as a limited partner to some apartment buildings and I got hooked, after I got my first distribution check. I was like, wow, I didn't have to do anything for this. I just, these guys make the money for me. That's great. So that's how I got into real estate. And then, I got my real estate license afterwards. I wanted to learn and earn. So that's the transition.
How did you find that first deal that you got into as an LP?
Some Facebook or Instagram ad.
Got it.
Yeah.
And how many did you go through, or how long did that process take from the time you figure, hey, I want to do this till you actually, wired a check? Or
It was only a few months. I think being at Tesla taught me to be an action taker, not to sit on the sidelines for too long. Like I think, who knows if it's going to be a good or bad investment, but like you never know if you don't do it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm in real estate, like I said, about 25 years, but I only started buying multifamily and raising outside capital in 2017. And before I did that, I did not invest in anybody else's deals. I was buying smaller assets. I was basically just doing everything myself, one to fours. That asset class is more of an owner operator type of business. I was sticking to one drivable area, from where I lived. This was in New Jersey where I was investing, although I was living in New York. And before I started looking at property, well, I guess I was always looking at larger properties, but before I really was making offers, what I did was I set aside, a certain amount of money, and I said I'm going to invest as an LP into a bunch of deals, meaning I'm going to ask the lowest amount possible just to really see how all different types of operators work, communicate, their pitch decks, just everything. And I went into probably 7 or 8 deals within a 6 month period. What's your minimum? And then from there, I would look at the deals and I was looking for small entries. I was looking for where they were raising large money, but what their lowest entry would be. My main reason was to educate myself. But what I found out that no matter how much money I had in the deal, which was very little, found these founders, these operators were, I don't want to say beholden to me, but they would take my calls. Hey, I'm an investor. Hey, I might lead to future investments, referrals, etc. And they really allowed me to pick their brain I wasn't too annoying. I didn't really bother them about the specific property. I just had a lot of questions about different aspects. And, they really enjoyed talking to me. And when I started looking at other properties to go in as a GP and buy, I would reach out to them, not asking them for money. I wasn't asking them to sign on the loan. I was just asking them different, technical questions. How should I proceed? How should I, communicate with certain investors? And not all of them gave me time of day, but a lot of them did, and really educated me when I started raising capital outside capital. You're in Queens, and New York City is very tough to invest in. What year did you start up with Cornell Communities as a founder?
Yeah, and to add on to what you just said, I think that's a great way to get into investments. Is like, like don't be ashamed, or like don't feel, embarrassed or whatever, asking like, hey, what's your minimum, and then putting that in, because it is a good way to, get your repetitions in. Because then, like, how do you know what's good or bad before you actually have experience? So, place a little bit here, place a little bit there, see how each team does things, like how they do investor reporting, like if you reach out, who responds, right? If it's like the operator itself or like the founder, like that's amazing. But if it's like an investor relations guy, you're like, okay. Sometimes like the investor relations person is actually like a salesperson in disguise. Like those are like, you'll start to see like what makes sense for you. And yeah, just do that through repetitions. Um, and then, Stephen, to answer your question, as far as Cornell Communities, we started it in 2022. It was kind of happenstance. Prior to this, like I wasn't really planning on doing something like this, but I had a mutual friend kind of sit me down one time. He was in the private equity world. He did a stint at a mobile home park fund, and he's like, Leo, I want to sit you down. I want to walk you through this business plan because I think it makes a lot of sense. So for me, what drew me to it was, yeah, I mean, look, everything's got to make money. Like if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. But there is that social component that, like, hey, you are offering a useful service to the economy, which is affordable housing. People need this. So you get to kind of play your part in it, revitalize communities, like increase their quality of living, and just be a part of that movement. So I really like that. Just back from my time at Tesla, like I'm a very mission driven person. I want to, like, money's a byproduct, but like what are you doing with your time, right? So I always want to work towards a cause.
Where are you investing? Which part of the country?
So call it, well, we're in three different markets, but I would say like growing in two. So we have like a couple assets in like the tri-state area, more so like southeast, so like the Carolinas, Virginia, Midwest. As far out as like Oklahoma, Kansas. We like those states for various reasons. The southeast is generally better for like population growth, rent to income ratio, versus like the Midwest is just more like cash flow heavy, more business friendly.
Yeah, we own multifamily assets in Louisville, Kentucky, and in Cleveland suburbs.
Nice.
Some of the smaller assets are in New Jersey. We really love New Jersey. Appreciation is great there. The other markets have a better cash flow component to it. When you said tri-state area, does that mean right outside of New York City, like New Jersey or upstate New
New
York?
Jersey, yeah, yeah. We have a few down in South Jersey. And the reason why we are not super keen on growing is because it's just, there's been like, laws that pass here and there. There's one last year that's just like, if you sell, you have to pay like 3.5% just for one line item for taxes. And we're like, okay, it's just getting like, it's eating into the model a little bit too much.
Yeah, yeah. I know if you're a resident of Jersey, sometimes you could save on some of that.
Yeah.
But as a non-resident, which I am, which I'm a non-resident, I'm always seeing that tax.
Yeah.
Although some of my New Jersey properties are more buy and hold, so I sort of kick the can down the road with the
Yeah.
fee.
Yeah.
With those, I'm more refinancing and
Yep.
constant refinancing and stuff like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. That's kinda evolved, to our strategy as well. Kinda in New Jersey, it's like, if you don't have to sell it, or if there's, like, a crazy offer, fine, but, like, if not, just, like, cash flow, refinance, it's fine. Like, we took out a lot of depreciation for these assets anyways, because like, mobile home parks, they have a ton of depreciation. So,
Yeah,
we run the cost segs. So, yeah, we have no reason to sell, at least, like, nothing compelling.
yeah, yeah. I've run the cost seg on a few, and we looked at we looked at we got an offer, and we ended up declining selling it. But one of the reasons was we would be, I guess that's something called recapture. So, we're depreciating, 27 or 35 years worth of depreciation in one shot to bonus depreciation. And hey, you're selling it after three. You got to recapture some of that. Sort of, taught us a lot. But we use a cost seg guy. He's based in Jersey, Madison. Shout
Oh,
out
yeah.
to Madison.
Yeah, yeah. Isaac?
Isaac
Do you
Weinberger. Yes, yes. I've
Yeah.
been on his
Isaac.
podcast. He's great. I actually met him like at a show
Mhm.
at a real estate conference in Jersey, sorry, in Florida. But his company was sponsoring it, and he was brand new. He was like in it for like 3 weeks at the time, and this is going back at least 3 or 4 years, maybe more. And he was just very nice, and you could tell that he's new, but he wasn't annoying, and he
Yeah.
wasn't. He was just all around great. He was easy to communicate with, and even when he followed up, it wasn't like an annoying way. And I was happy to give him business within a few months of knowing him. He's a really great guy. He does some of his own events, but yeah, this is not a shout out. This is not a plug for him as far as a paid plug, but definitely reach out to him. He's all over LinkedIn, etc.
Yeah.
Isaac, if you're
We
listening,
just
you
like him.
better. Yeah, Isaac, if you're listening, you better send me a gift basket for all this spending 12% of this podcast recording on you. What does your typical deal look like? Is it 50 units plus, 100 units plus, 500 units plus? What's your typical buy bucks?
Yeah, so right now, kind of our bread and butter is call it the sub-institutional but investment grade realm. So, call it between 30 and 200 units as far as mobile home park goes. And we do that because we want to make sure the asset is big enough to have our level of support. Because, we don't operate it ourselves. We're not like buying stuff in our backyard, swinging by. Like we have staff members and stuff like that. So to be able to put in our playbook. And then if you get on the high end, like 100 units plus, like that's when these institutions come in, these larger private equity firms, like they have cheaper cost of capital to you, which is just a fancy word of saying like their investors are okay with getting less. So, we get outbid all the time. So, we kind of pick out our own niche. We're like, hey, let's compile a portfolio here. Let's add some value here, get a nice win for our investors. And yeah, we like to do that typically. And it's like a pyramid, in terms of like the preferences. They're not hard and fast rules, but city utilities, they're always a plus because the one caveat with mobile home parks that you have to watch out for, in addition to regulations, is the infrastructure. Because you're not getting a lot of these projects approved anymore. It just like they were grandfathered in, they predate HUD, so they're just there, and municipalities don't really they're not excited to approve more just because it costs too much to service compared to the revenue that it brings in. So you want to make sure, I mean, these properties are like 50, 70 years old. Like, I don't know, like a septic system, like an inspector will tell you it's like good for, you know, 30 years, and then you might want to switch it. So you want to just make sure that you're budgeting in advance for any kind of deferred maintenance and CapEx work just to keep the community going.
For apartments that you're buying, not the RV parks or mobile parks, are these Class A, Class B, Class C?
So I don't on the GP side, I don't really do like multifamily apartments. I just do it as an LP. And it's more so like I think it's more sponsor dependent. I've learned being a GP myself that the jockey matters more than the horse almost. Like I care a lot about like who the team is, how they make decisions. I like to get to know them. Rather than like the opportunity itself.
Oh, interesting, interesting. Yeah, definitely. A good operator could take a bad deal and work it out. Okay, a bad operator could take a great deal and screw over. Screw up. Wow. Okay, you are third party managing these properties.
It's a hybrid. We have we're building out kind of in-house management for a lot of them, but I would say we're constrained by our capacity because I'm always very very cognizant of my team's capacity. Never want to make sure that they're too overwhelmed. So we'll third party manage or like have outside vendors like manage our properties as needed until we kind of build up that in-house capability.
Got it. Okay, let me do a little background over here. So I googled you before we started, and it tells me you're a first generation American. Where you're from, you sound very American. Where you're from, where do you live, when did you come here, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I grew up in Hong Kong, and I came here to finish up high school. So when I was 17, and appreciate your compliment on the accent. I would say like I'm an adaptable person, but then also B, like, being a boy in public school that you kind of trial by fire. They're gonna be like teasing you for your accents. They'll say like aluminium. Like what is that? You mean aluminum? So it quickly rounds out.
Got it. Got You moved here with family, or you came on your own, sort of?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With family, fortunately. So my uncle, he went to school here, so went over there in Massachusetts, came down to New Jersey for college, and then back up for a long time, and then came down to New York during COVID.
So when you came here, you came straight to Queens?
I'm in New York City's Manhattan. So yeah, my wife, she works in Manhattan, and also like the fund I was working for at the time was like, all right, time to come back in person. So I'm like, all right,
Got it. Got it. Okay. So you're a fellow New Yorker, just like me. We love New York sometimes, and we hate it a lot of the times. Yeah, it's very tough to live here, but for some reason, a lot of us never leave.
yeah. Take the
It's New
good with the
York.
bad, right? Or the bad with the good.
Yeah, I mean, New York is great, and it's hard to leave. I like, believe it or not, even though it was freezing and bitter cold, I like the seasons. I like different. I don't know if I could live in Florida. Being a working a 9 to 5 stiff, living in Florida. It's good to vacation in, but could I like go to an office and it's 112 degrees in July and all that?
Yeah. I think that the whole thing of I mean, for at least for me, I don't need to drive. I just take the train or Ubers everywhere. Being from Boston, like, I have PTSD kinda driving or, like, digging out my car after a blizzard. You spend half your Saturday, and that's like a whole workout. You're like, "Oh my god, I don't wanna do this again." So, yeah, not having to worry about that is great.
Yeah, there was a lot of digging out for me, and I'm fortunate to have some older sons who are teenagers, and they
Nice.
helped out a lot. But there's a lot of digging out. There was a lot of I don't want to drive there because I don't want to lose my spot, or I don't want to try to find the spot. Yeah, it was very tough. It's today as we're recording. It's I think yesterday was 65. I'm not sure what today is, but
Yeah,
New York is great.
it's beautiful.
Do you travel a lot for work?
Yeah, occasionally. Work takes me to, the most rural corners of America, which is great. I mean, I really like just being out there in nature. I'll be in like rural, I don't know, like Ohio or Kansas or something, meeting sellers, checking out properties, shaking hands, all that stuff. We kind of just do it, especially on the deal front, to just have a better relationship with the seller and, be able to get better deals and then, consequently bring better deals to our investors.
So when you're traveling, you're flying and then you're driving out sometime. I mean, you're not 2 minutes from the airport, I assume.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not too far away though. Yeah. I mean, LaGuardia, Newark, JFK, it's like close enough, but it's like a day trip.
No, I meant when you're landing and looking at these assets.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, when I fly, I'm really 10
yeah,
minutes from those airports, whether it's Ohio or
yeah,
Kentucky and some other states. I do some stuff, and
yeah,
but yeah, I fly out of LaGuardia. Even though I live right by
yeah,
JFK, I fly out of LaGuardia.
yeah.
Delta, brand new terminal, very comfortable, etc.
Yeah. That's the one benefit of, like multifamily or like, other kind of properties other than mobile home parks, because mobile home parks are super like rural. They're mostly approved and existent in areas that are like more tertiary. Because if it's in like, I don't know, downtown Columbus, like that probably was bought by a developer many years ago and like built up an apartment building ready. So yeah.
I did a deal in as an LP in Mississippi, and the operator owned, I don't know, maybe 12, 1,500 units in various cities over there. And I got into a few of the deals over there. And when I used to ask him advice, he said, try to find property that is near the airport because, especially Mississippi, being from New York, there are really no direct flights. He told me he's flying to New Orleans and he's driving an hour or two, or somebody else I know was doing a deal in Alabama. They had to fly to Atlanta and then drive a few hours. So I noticed all the big hubs, all the Atlantas and Floridas, and the places with multiple direct flights. Those properties, a lot of Northeast money is already in those areas. Even Kentucky, when I fly to Louisville, there's only two airlines that do a direct flights, and there's always New Yorkers flying. See, I fly like Tuesdays or Wednesdays of the week, and I see the same people. I'll be on the morning flight, and then sometimes on the evening flight, or sometimes I take the next day flight, and I'm always bumping into the same people, same
Same
flight
commuters.
attendants.
Yeah, that's great.
So, what else do you do outside of real estate for fun?
Hmm.
Reading
You know, I
books,
I
watching
will
TV, surfing.
well, I will say, like, yes, like, I'm one of those that, like, work just, like there is no border to it, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, I just embrace the seasons of life, and, like, right now, like, work is my life because I enjoy doing it. As an entrepreneur, like, I get to build my skills, which then brings more value to the marketplace and my team, and I get to see them grow, so, to me, that means a lot, but, like, outside work, yeah, I mean, I try to go for walks, nothing too crazy. Like go for walks, think about life, think about the business, which is very important because I think a lot of people they get stuck operating the business all day and not thinking about the business and strategy and like different perspectives. So, philosopher at heart, as I mentioned earlier. So I appreciate doing that. And I mean, look, New York is just such a great place to go for walks anytime. Yeah, and you can pop into like the history museum and just be inspired by like, okay, how did we come here, and like, what did we have to go through, the different perspectives and stuff. So yeah, I really enjoy doing that.
Okay, Leo, it was great having you on. Let's tell the audience how they can reach you, website, social media. Tell us all. We'll be in the show notes and it'll be disseminated to all the podcast platforms. So go for it.
Yeah. So two ways to reach out. If you want to learn more about our team, mobile home parks, how we can double your investment every 5 years. That's like general rule of thumb. Go to cornellcommunities.com, CORNELLCOMUNITIES.com. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have just like one-off questions. I'm happy to be a resource. It's Leo Young, LEOYOUNG. Or on Instagram, it's Leo Young Real Estate.
Okay, Leo, thank you very much. I'll make sure to include that. This was fun. This was nice.
Yeah,
A fellow New Yorker,
that's right.
somebody who understands the pain of living here sometimes, but for whatever reason, we haven't gotten out. And it's by choice for the most part, at least by me and for a lot of people I speak to. This has been another episode of the Wealth Clock podcast. Please like, subscribe, share it with friends, make some comments. Sometimes I'll respond. If it's a comment about Leo, I will hound him and track him down and make him respond. Leo, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks so much, Stephen.
Take care.
Take care.